Hello buddy, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be going over the Season 10 one-trick video. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton. Come by, check out the stream on YouTube every night around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually go till about 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to have you. It's a very chill, friendly community. I try to be as conversational as possible while I'm playing, and I also try to explain everything that I'm doing so you can kind of understand a little bit more about my decision making. As of the making of this video, excuse me, I'm a D3 support main, so we'll see where I go in the new season, but that's where I'm coming from. And be sure to check out the rest of the content as well on the channel. We do in-depth patch notes, tier lists. We have a coaching session playlist on the channel, individual guides for specific champions, macro guides, micro guides, all kinds of new content constantly coming out. So be sure to come by, check all of that out. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. You can access this Google Doc as well in the description if you just want to kind of scroll through and just get the list itself. And I'll also have timestamps if you want to jump around to your favorite parts. Like if you just want to know what do I think about support one tricks, you can just skip down to that part if you want to. Okay, so as with any sort of tier list style content, just please keep in mind that this is targeted towards a broader audience. So the hundreds or thousands of people that will be watching this, that's who I'm targeting. So I'm not looking at like you specifically that are watching this as an individual on your phone right now or on your computer. So just keep in mind that just because I don't talk about something or I don't think as highly about it as perhaps you do, it doesn't mean that it can't be good. There are all kinds of exceptions to anything that any tier list is going to say out there. You can technically be good on anything, right? If you just put enough time in and you're just really, really good on it, you're really good on it. So if you have a 60% win rate on Callista bottom and you've got 2,000 games and you're a challenger, fine, play Callista. You know, that's great. That's awesome. So just because I don't mention something doesn't mean that it can't be successful. It just means that I don't recommend it as highly as I might recommend other picks to this larger, broader audience, right? And the other thing is I'm choosing this to try to help people climb as much as they possibly can in Season 10. So that's my goal. That's why I'm making it, okay? If you're just a for fun player, there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. You know, maybe you say, well, I think that, you know, such and such is a really fun champion and I like to play him. That's fine. Go ahead and play him, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You know, if you just want to enjoy the game and you're not concerned about winning and you just want to play, that's fine. It's just to give you some ideas and some things to think about in terms of what might be successful if you're trying to climb in Season 10. So just keep both of those things in mind as we go through. Okay, so I'm just going to do a really quick preamble for maybe 5 minutes here and just kind of explain my methodology. What is one-tricking? What are some qualities of good one-tricks? And then we'll go into the list itself here really quick. So if you don't want to know about the methodology or like why one-tricking could be good, then you can just skip down in the timestamp to whichever part you want to watch. Okay, so why one trick? The biggest thing is you're just going to have a lot more knowledge of the matchup. You're going to know exactly which item spikes you're going to be good on, which level spikes you're going to be good on, which cooldowns you should be looking for on the enemy. And that's also going to free up your mind so that you can have better macro, pay better attention to the minimap, make better rotations, just make better decisions in general. So you're going to know the matchups, you're going to have better mechanics, you're going to have practiced all the skill shots and different combos you can do, and that's going to allow you to have better macro overall. So if you've played Riven versus Darius 1,000 times, you're going to have just a much higher chance of winning, usually, than if you're just kind of first-timing Riven into Darius and you don't have any experience. That's pretty obvious. I think experience usually means that people are going to be better at something, but that's pretty much the advantage of one-tricking, is that you get a huge experience advantage on a lot of people by doing that. Okay. So what are the qualities of a really good one-trick then? So good one-tricks will have as many of these qualities as possible that I'm going to talk about. It's going to be extremely rare that a one-trick will have all of these qualities, although it's possible. But the more of these they can have, the better. So one of the biggest things is presence, okay? And what that means is pick rate combined with ban rate. Okay, so if you're one-tricking something, you want to be able to play it a lot, right? Because if you don't get your one-trick champion, if it's banned or the enemy picks it a lot, you can't play it. That's going to be bad because you're going to have to play something that you don't have as much experience on. So ideally, you want to pick something or you want to choose something to one-trick that has less than a 25% presence in solo queue. So that means that with its pick rate and its ban rate combined, it's less than 25%. Now, that's not always possible. Some of the things that I recommend are going to be more popular than that, but that's a good goal to have. So, for example, I don't recommend Yasuo as a one-trick. I have him as an honorable mention just because his presence is so high. He's banned 50% of the time, and he's picked 21.5% of the time. So that means that if you want to play Yasuo, you're not going to be able to do it in 70% of your games because he's pretty much going to be picked and banned a ton. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing is to look at pro presence. So even though I assume most people watching this are not pros, it's important to look at what pros are playing and don't one-trick those champions, okay? If something they're playing is really strong and is dominating the pro scene, you don't want to play that. And the main reason is it's going to get banned, or it's going to get nerfed, I should say. It's going to get banned in solo queue a lot more. People are going to play it a lot more, so it's going to have more presence, but it's also much more likely to get nerfed. And this is kind of obvious if you've ever paid attention to how stuff gets nerfed, but Riot explicitly detailed stuff that they put on their watch list and why back in a May post called Dev Champion Balance Framework. You can read through this in more detail if you want to. But the general gist of it is that in pro play, if something has more than a 90% presence on one patch, or if it has an 80% presence in 2 or more patches, it's on their watch list and it's likely to get nerfed. So if we look at the recent tournaments over the winter here with the Kespa Cup and Demacia Cup, Akali and Miss Fortune are both on their watch list, right? Because Akali has 100% presence and 97% presence on Miss Fortune. So if that keeps up like that for a couple more patches, they're likely going to get nerfed, okay? So you want to keep that in mind. I would say that someone like Kiana is probably like pushing it. She's at 75%, but she had a 70% win rate as well. So those champs right there, I would be pushing it. So right now, if I were just going to pick a one trick, I would be careful with those. Although they could still work. So just look at that. And they talk about lower elo brackets as well. The main thing to keep in mind here is, and you know, once again, I'm not going to explain everything they have, but pretty much if something has more than a 54.5% win rate, or if it's 52.5, but it has more than a 35% ban rate, then it's likely going to get nerfed. So this would be Mordekaiser in solo queue. So his pro presence is not like ultra high, but in solo queue, he's got a 39% win rate and a 53.5% play rate. So that's going to be a red flag. He's probably going to get nerfed sometime soon. So just keep that in mind. As you're trying to learn new champions and invest the time, you don't want to spend the next 2 weeks, you know, playing 30 games of Miss Fortune because you see her a ton in pro play right now, and then all of a sudden she gets nerfed right at the beginning of the season. That's definitely feels bad. So you can go against the grain. You can hope they don't nerf them and stuff like that, but they have pretty much spelled it out here for you that they're at least on the watch list if they meet some of these criteria. So you want to watch out for that. Another thing that makes a good one trick is versatile itemization and runes. So if you're trying to play a champion or one trick a champion that absolutely has to have Conquer or it doesn't function, that's dangerous right now because a lot of people still consider Conquer to be really overpowered even after the nerfs. So I would say it is highly likely in the first like 5 patches or so of the season, it's likely that that rune could get nerfed. Okay, I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying that there's a lot of chatter out there about that item or about that rune, and so you just need to be very, very careful. So some of the best champions that are good at one-tricking will be able to take multiple runes. So Kai'Sa's an example of this, right? Like she can go press the attack, she can go fleet footwork, she can go conquer. There's a lot of different things that she can run. Okay, so watch out for that. And itemization is another thing. If a champion has to have one specific item, especially one that's getting a lot of attention, then you need to be very careful with that. So, for example, Stormrazor right now, if it's a champion that relies very heavily on Stormrazor to be effective, so I would say that Caitlyn and like Jhin right now are very reliant on Stormrazor. Just be careful with that. I don't think they're going to nerf Stormrazor in the near future, but it's possible that they could nerf items like that. So just be aware that that's potentially on the table. And then you want somebody who's going to be proficient in many metas, so people who could be good in a tank meta, an assassin meta, a mage meta, just people that are always going to be, you know, relevant. Good against a whole bunch of different champions, good with a whole bunch of different playstyles. Someone who's just OP, and the way that I'm sort of defining that is they have at least 2 of these qualities, and ideally 3 of them: mobility, high damage, and resilience. Okay? And by resilience, I just mean they're difficult to kill. So part of that could be that they have a lot of armor and magic resist in their kit. It could be that they have shields or heals on themselves. Could be that they have some kind of damage mitigation. So, something like the Irelia W, if timed right, or the Fiora Riposte. So usually some of the most OP champs are going to have 2 or probably all 3 of those qualities. Limited enemy counterplay, so it's things that are point clicks, are difficult to dodge, they're difficult to escape from. There aren't many like popular counter picks to them. So just stuff where there's not a lot of enemy counterplay to it. And then a versatile playstyle, so they can snowball really hard if they're ahead. They can be played in multiple lanes as flex picks. They can win through different win conditions, so they can split push, they can team fight, they can assassinate. They can just do all. They have other kinds of utility where they're relevant when they fall behind. So that's another potential perk there. So the best one tricks are going to have most of these qualities ideally. At least a good chunk of them, at least half of them, I would say, are going to be good one tricks. And then the difference between gold and plat. So this is a little arbitrary, but this is where Riot draws the line here when they're talking about average play versus skilled play. And it's a sliding scale. So there are going to be different types of champs that are better at lower elo brackets and different types of champs that are better at higher elo brackets. So for example, support Brand is going to be way better the closer you get down to like iron and bronze, because people aren't going to be able to dodge his skill shots. They're not going to respect his damage, and he's going to be able to get a ton of kills so that he gets enough gold to afford his expensive items and snowball, right? Versus someone like Tom Kinch is going to be much, much stronger the closer you get to pro play, because he functions really well on a low gold economy. He doesn't need items, and he has very, very powerful, unique abilities that are really strong in pro play. So basically a free Quicksilver Sash for someone on your team that's going to get CC'd, really good at tower diving, really good at macro with his ultimate. These are all qualities that are special to Tom Kinch that make him uniquely powerful in pro, but much weaker in solo queue because he doesn't scale well with gold. He requires a lot of team coordination. There's just a lot of ways that your teammates can mess up Tom Kinch's kit. So that's just a couple of examples. So higher games, there's going to be more game knowledge, better macro, better able to dodge skill shots. There's going to be lower gold as you go up, so you have to be able to function in a lower gold economy. Faster games in general, so things that can snowball are good, or things that don't require late game scaling. Better rotations as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about that. So I just wanted to throw down about 10 minutes there, just really quick, just to talk about the methodology, how to think about one tricks, and just remember it's long term, right? Like I'm talking the entire season and maybe even beyond. I'm not talking about what's going to be good next patch or the patch after that. So I'm trying to set you up for success. Because if you're going to put a lot of time in and just one trick a champion and do a lot there, maybe buy a lot of skins for this champ, put a lot of time in practicing them, you want to make sure it's going to be something that's good for longer than just a couple of patches. So one tricking is not the same as just trying to win games and play what's in the meta. It's a whole different ball game. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we start talking about these picks. Okay, so let's start with the top lane. Now, I will say that top and middle in general are extremely diverse for the most part. So there are a lot of different champions that can be very successful, especially in the one-trick arena in both of those lanes. This is the hardest one to narrow down. So there will be a lot of things that I cannot mention. I'm going to try to go through, like I said, at least like 50 champions in this video in probably like 45 minutes to an hour or so. We're just not going to be able to cover everything. So I apologize in advance if I don't talk about your favorite champ, but let's go ahead and get in here. Okay, Rise. So we'll start with Platinum Plus. Riot just has a really hard time balancing this champion. And he still is very strong, even after all of the nerfs. Still has a 73% pro presence, 51% win rate. He just has excellent wave clear. He has a point-click snare, so it's very difficult to avoid him, to get away from him. He gets a lot of movement speed with phased rush that allows him to reposition, chase people down. He does massive AoE damage in team fights off of very few items. So even though he has to get 2 scaling items, Rod of the Ages and Seraph's Embrace, he still is going to do a lot of damage off of just one of those items just because the way that his kit is stacked. So it seems like, you know, back in the day it used to take him a long time to come online. but he's online a lot earlier, and they did nerf him recently. So we'll see if they nerf him again. I think that at 73% presence with 51% win rate, that's probably not enough to nerf him in Pro. We'll see. His win rate in solo queue is not that great either, and so you don't really have to worry too much about solo queue people taking him out, right? He's got a 43% win rate, and he only has 16% presence. So you should be pretty good to go there. But if you master this guy, he's really, really good. So he does get reworked a lot, so you got to kind of keep up with the curve. But that also discourages a lot of people from playing him because he's so complicated. And he gets reworked and rebalanced so often. But the thing is, he's almost always really strong, regardless of how they rework him or what they do with him throughout a lot of his history. He has been a pretty good champion, especially in pro play. So I think that Rise is a pretty good pick there. And another thing is he can be flexed to middle. So that's huge for a couple reasons. Number one, the enemy's not going to know if you are going top or if you're going mid. So it's going to be a lot less likely that they counterpick you. And if you pick, mid lane and top lane as your two roles, you're probably going to get those most of the time, and you can play Rise in either one of those positions. So that's really, really handy if you have someone that can flex to multiple positions, especially for one tricks, because not only does it help you with your matchups, but it makes sure that you can play your one trick in the vast majority of your games. You would only have to dodge if you get auto-filled, not if you get your secondary role. So I think that Rise is, great for all the reasons that I just mentioned. He meets these two criteria, pretty flexible with runes and itemization. I think he might even be taking Conquer lately these days. I know he was messing around with that, but he can also do Phase Rush, which is really strong. The new Presence of Mind is actually probably really good on him as well, because it gives him 500 mana, which converts over to more damage. So he has versatile itemization and runes, very good in a lot of metas. He has really high damage, pretty high mobility that we talked about before. He has a decent amount of resilience because he's going to get Rod of the Ages and Seraph, so he's going to have a shield, and he's going to have a lot of health. I think even in some situations, I don't know if he still does it, but in the past I've seen him go for like Frozen Heart sometimes, or even like a Righteous Glory sometimes. So there are a lot of different things you can get on him that can potentially make him stronger. He can itemize into things like a Banshees later if he really needs to. So very versatile there. Not a lot of counterplay to him out there. He just scales so hard. He's going to outscale almost everybody. Has really good wave clear, so it's hard to push him in and bully him. And he has that versatile playstyle, right? He's awesome at team fights, but he can also split push if he needs to. He has really good utility with his ult. He can rotate to different situations. He can escape from different situations. So I just think that makes him very, very strong overall. Another one, a similar one, is going to be Vlad. So Vlad is someone who almost always flies under the radar. It is very rare that pros play him a lot. He is seen sometimes in pro play. He did have a 63% win rate, but he was only picked 8 times. And then in solo queue as well, he almost never has like an insane win rate. It's usually pretty good, 50, usually somewhere between 50 to 52%. But a lot of people, he just flies under the radar a lot of the time. So he only has almost a 25% on the dot presence. So that's really strong. And similar to Rise, like he has really good scaling overall. He's also pretty resilient. So he has a lot of damage and he has decent mobility. He's got the pool for utility, which gives him survivability and mobility. He can also itemize into things like Proto Belt, which gives him a little bit more mobility as well. I think he takes Phase Rush. Sometimes he's gone Electrocute in the past. He is flexible in terms of runes, but I think a lot of time he'll end up going for Phase Rush. So that does give him a lot of mobility as well. And just the sustain is really nice in lane also. It's just very hard to bully him out because he can just sustain through a lot of matchups. And so his early game is not insane. He's not great with ganks. He doesn't have a lot of CC. But at the same time, he's really hard to gank himself, and he does scale really hard over time. So that's pretty handy. And he can be flex mid lane, so he can go top or he can go mid lane if you're really good on him. He's good in a lot of different metas overall. There's not a ton of counterplay to him. You can try to just lock him down and CC, chain CC him and kill him, but he's just very slippery with the Zanyas, with his healing, with his pool. He has a lot of answers to a lot of different things out there. And he's obviously, like, his main win con is going to be team fighting, but he can split push, and he's an okay duelist later on in the game against a lot of different types of champs as well. So I think that makes him really proficient. And then the final one that I'll mention is Riven. Like, you can't really make, I think, you can't really make a one-trick tier list if you don't have Riven on there, because she's probably the most famous one-trick of all time. There are a ton of challenger players that really became famous off of playing Riven. There's that one guy back in 2014. It was like best Riven NA, and that was kind of the start of like the superstar kind of arrogant personalities, like people that weren't pros but just rose to prominence off of like one tricking. I mean, there were other people as well. I guess arrogance is a bit of a strong word, but just kind of like really known for one tricking and kind of made a name for themselves off of that. Gosu was another one with like Vayne. And there are some other ones as well, but Riven is definitely one of the OG champs that is just always really, really strong. There's Viper's very good on Riven. I think Revenge is very good on Riven. Most people that are challenger top laners at least partially got there by playing Riven. So the thing about her is she just has a ton of mobility. She has a lot of outplay potential. She's mechanically very intense, so it can feel very rewarding. It can feel great, you know, when you get really good on her. A lot of outplay potential, highlight reels, and all of that with Riven over time. She is virtually never there in pro play because she's a fairly high-risk pick. So you don't have to worry about her getting nerfed out for that. And because she's so difficult to play, it's very rare that she has over a 52.5% win rate either. So she's pretty much like... people know that she's really good, but at the same time... she just doesn't get played in pro, and then she just doesn't have a huge amount of presence because a lot of people are just too scared to play her. So, I think that really makes for a great one-trick. Now, she can be played mid lane as well. I think that's a bit riskier. She does not have as great... I mean, her scaling is good, but she's a bit more conditional than Ryze and Vlad, I think, in that sense. So she's not... she doesn't have as much resilience. She can get dumpstered in some matchups. I'm not a Riven expert, but I don't think she's amazing in the tanks a lot of the time, so she can get worked over top lane by something like an Ornn or a Malphite potentially. But nevertheless, she is still really, really strong, and she can take over if you get good. So she's obviously going to be a really strong Smurf type of champion, but even for people that are just naturally in Platinum, then she can still be very, very effective. So I think that she's going to be great. She is kind of reliant on Conquer. She can probably do all right with other runes as well, but she's someone who definitely does like Conquer a lot. So if that gets nerfed, you want to keep an eye on that. And she has somewhat... I don't even know what she builds. I know that she has built different things. Like, there have been some times where she does go for lethality, but there are other times, and I think right now she's going for more of a lifesteal kind of build. With either Bloodthirster or Death Stance, I would imagine. Let me just look at her here real quick. Actually, I haven't been paying attention to the Riven itemization as much, so obviously Conquer. But yeah, kind of a Death Stance, Cleaver, Death Stance kind of build, so sort of Bruiser sort of build, so she's alright. So I think that if you get really good on her, but... you know, like I said, a lot of what holds her back is just she's so difficult to play. She's one of the most mechanically intense champs in the game because there are a lot of animation cancels that aren't really obvious that you have to do to execute her fast combo really well. So I think that she's still going to be really solid. I think that she's one of the better one-tricks out there. Okay, so let's talk about Gold minus. Now, keep in mind, these champions can also be really good, especially still in Platinum. They start to fall off a bit once you get, like, Diamond and higher. But even into Platinum, these are going to be really good. So Darius, very obvious one. Everybody knows that Darius is super strong. He almost never has any pro presence. Oh, I put the wrong thing there. He virtually never has any pro presence. So you're safe on that front. He is pretty good with different itemization paths. So lately, people have been going Trinity on him, but he can go Black Cleaver, and then you just kind of get an assortment of different tank items depending on the situation there. He can go Conquer. Obviously, that's the main thing that's really good on him, but he can also go something like Phase Rush in the past. I know I think was pretty popular on him at one point as well. He even has some flexibility in terms of his summoners, right? So I think it's very popular for people to take Ghost on him right now in the top lane. And that's flexible in and of itself because it can help you escape because you don't have very good escapes. So then you have Flash and Ghost to run if you need to, but it can also be used offensively to get those kills. But he can also run Ignite and he can run Teleport. So super flexible in all these different ways. And he's just a straight, stomp champion. Everybody knows this about it. If he gets ahead, it's just almost impossible to step up to him. If he gets that pull on you, you're probably dead. And then even in team fights, if you can just get, someone on your team just holds them still, you can just get those resets and completely take over a game by yourself as Darius. So, just a super strong champion, very versatile. Just the fact that he does so much bleed damage. He has a self-heal built into his kit. He has a medium range engage to try to pull people in. And he's got the ult with resets. If he ever gets that kill, he just gets to stack that bleed on everyone else and just chain the true damage on everybody. So Darius is very, very strong. Now the one thing about him is he does draw bans, particularly in lower elo brackets. He's going to get banned, right? So he does have right now, at least in Platinum Plus, he does have about a 46% presence. So that is over the line. But it's not like a 50% ban rate, but 35 is still going to be pretty high. So that's the one knock on Darius. But if you can get him, then he is going to be really, really strong. If Darius is taken, you can try Garen out or something as well. Garen was nerfed recently, but he's still pretty decent as well. I think that Darius is more flexible, though, and is going to be stronger than Garen is. So Darius is a pretty good one. He's also not that hard to play, which is a gift and a curse. It's a gift because he's consistent and you're going to be able to climb, but you could get bored with him if you play 500 games. You do get a lot of dunks though, and he is a champion that can get, a lot of multi-kills, a lot of triple quads and pentakills. So that does increase the fun factor for a lot of people out there. But he's still going to be strong. Now, he doesn't have an insane split push option later because he's very vulnerable to ganks. But he does have a good team fight option, so I still think he's going to be really good. Yorick is another one, and this is one of the, almost just perpetual, really strong champion that goes under the radar. He's almost always got a 53 or a 54% win rate. No one in pro ever plays him, and he just completely dominates in lower elo brackets especially. He's just so good at taking towers. So good at split pushing. He's really oppressive in lane. A lot of people have no clue what his ghouls do. And so they'll just sit there and try to fight him in the middle of his ghouls. And they'll just destroy him. So he is really good. They did actually make it to where he's actually an even better split pusher because now he can detach the Maiden and the ghouls and have them independently split push a side lane while he rotates. Hey, thanks Casper. I appreciate it. Or Casper. Thanks for the sub. So he can detach, send, the Maiden and some ghouls pushing a side lane, almost like a banner minion, if you remember Banner of Command, and then he can rotate and try to go get a dragon or try to go get Baron or whatever. So, excellent split pusher, great bully early on, has the surprise factor. People don't play against him a lot. They don't know what he does. He's kind of complicated. His team fighting is okay, kind of depends on the situation. His team fighting's all right, not amazing, but his split pushing is fantastic, and you do get the element of surprise with him. And he's just pretty much always had a high win rate, I think. I don't remember if I still have League of Graphs here open. This is a pretty good site as well, League of Graphs, and you can get some historical data here. Let me pull up Yorick and just kind of see. So if you look at his win rate history here, he's almost never below 50%. There's a couple of things here and there, but if you look at this, he's pretty much always 52% plus. And his popularity is almost always 2%, which is just crazy if you're trying to one trick. That's exactly what you want, right? Where it's someone who virtually has no bans. There's a couple of spikes where people thought he was OP for one patch. A couple of spikes in there. But overall, for the past 5 years, it's just virtually no bans, 2% or less pick rate, and I don't know, 52 or 53% average win rate. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that in terms of statistics justifying a champion to one trick. So, you know, he is like almost the definition of a one trickable champion because he has no pro presence, no solo queue, versatile itemization. He does kind of rely on Trinity, but I highly doubt they're going to nerf Trinity. Proficient in a lot of metas. He has high damage and like good resilience. His mobility is a little lacking, but you know, it is what it is. Fairly limited enemy counterplay in the top lane, and then a decent versatile playstyle. Now, he is pretty heavily reliant on split pushing, but he can function in a team fight if he has to. So I think he's a good candidate. Excuse me. And then Singed is the last one that I'll put on there. And that might seem a little bit weird. We're going to have to speed this up, definitely. For the next few rolls, I'm going a little slower than I'd like to go if we're going to try to cover like 50 champs. But Singed is another one that's just really underestimated, especially in lower elo brackets. People just don't, like, they just chase him all the time through the smoke. They don't understand what he does. He almost always has, he's another one that, you know, kind of almost always has like a 52% win rate. Sort of like Yorick if we pull up Singed. I haven't looked at him specifically, but I imagine it's going to be a fairly similar chart. He is a little bit more kind of in and out of the meta than some of the other champs out there, but I imagine it's still going to be similar. So slightly more popular during some metas. He can get up to 8% popularity, but a lot of the time he probably averages out at like 4% or so. Win rate, similar deal, right? Like he's almost always 52, 53%, and then ban rate, couple of spikes in there every now and then, but pretty much non-existent ban rate. So another great champ. He's particularly good in tank metas because you can get Leandries and Rylai's and just slowly burn tanks out, and you have so much kind of sustain yourself, especially with Conqueror right now. He can stack that up really easily with his smoke, and that gives him a lot of spell vamp. And then he can just kind of run circles around him. So he really, really good at split pushing, but then he can just farm everything on the map because he's so fast. So he can split push and then go start farming the enemy jungle, and he's just very difficult to catch. Now, he is okay in team fights too, because once he throws that goo down, it stops a lot of mobility. They changed it to where it adds a grounding effect to it. So that makes it really difficult on a lot of champions that rely on their mobility. So decent at team fighting, depending on your build. Okay, not insane, but is a very good split pusher and does actually scale quite well because of the interaction with Rylai's and Leandries in his kit. So I think he's a pretty good one, especially for lower elo where people don't understand him and they'll overchase him. Okay, honorable mentions. Akali, I think, is super strong. However, because of that huge pro presence, she could get nerfed again. So we'll just see. She's been a target for nerfs, and she's been really strong in pro for like a year and a half. But if you can get proficient on her, she's actually like pretty good as far as like solo queue goes in terms of stat-wise. If we look at her, right? Like, I guess she's a little over the top. She's not picked a ton, but she does have 50% presence, so that is on the high side. So that's why she's there. So I think she is strong, but she's on the high side. Mord is almost certainly going to get nerfed. If he doesn't, though, he could be good. Yasuo, like I mentioned before, can be really strong, but people just absolutely hate that champion. His win wall is just one of the most annoying abilities in the game. I personally don't think he's overpowered, but I understand why people don't like him. But it doesn't really matter how you feel about it. It is what it is. He's got a 70% presence. That's just too much. Now, Irelia is another one that I really wanted to squeeze on here, and I do think that she can be really good. She's only got a 15% presence in solo queue right now, and I don't think she's that high off the chart. She's only 54% in pro. So Irelia is someone that definitely deserves a slot. I mean, you could put Irelia in instead of Riven. There's definitely an argument for that. Very similar playstyle, but Irelia does get a bit tankier. She is a bit more flexible in terms of her playstyle and different runes. I think she does bring a bit more utility to the table with her ult than Riven does, but it's up to you. She's really good. Maybe I should have her up there. I think that Riven and Irelia are probably interchangeable. Both of them could be good. And then finally, Camille is another one that is a really good split pusher, has some different itemization options. She has been nerfed a lot over the last couple of years because of pro play, but she can still be really good. Doesn't have great team fighting at all, though, so you got to be careful with that. But still going to be a pretty good split pusher. Okay. Let's talk about jungle here, and then we'll move on. I really do want this to be like an hour or less. We're going to have to move through this a little bit quicker. But I do think that Jarvan at Platinum Plus is probably going to be the most reliable overall. Jarvan doesn't do a ton of really flashy things, but he does a lot of like undercover stuff. He's what Riot, he has a lot of what Riot calls undercover power, or what do they call it, like invisible power, which is what they're trying to remove from the game. Like they want everything to be more visible, but he's got a lot of invisible power that people just don't think about. So like his Q, for example, shreds 26% of armor on everyone that he hits, which is massive, like boost in damage to your AD carry and anyone else that that does physical damage. And then he also gives a lot of attack speed off of his flag, so that once again amplifies all of your auto attackers, so buffs up your AD carry a ton. And then his ultimate is really tricky for a lot of champions to try to get out of, because you can't QSS it, you can't Quicksilver Sash it, you can't Mikhail's it. And it's just a really good setup for a lot of other like AoE comps. So if Jarvan dunks like 3 people and Rumble drops an ult in there, or Misfortune ults, that then it's going to be a really, really powerful team fight tool. You also have like Orianna can throw her ball on him, Shen can ult him. There's a lot of different combos historically with Jarvan that make him very, very strong. Not only in pro, but he can be a really good setup in solo queue as well. And he's got very good early ganks. If you want those with his flag and drag combo, if he gets that knock up, they're going to have to flash or they're going to die. So it's like not like the most brutal early game combo, but it's pretty solid. And he can go sort of the physical damage dunk build. You know, he can take warrior and get a bunch of different damage items. But, you know, in some metas, he can also go Cinder Hulk and go for a tankier build. So he can adapt to what the game's going on, what's going on in the game, what's going on in terms of the meta. So he's just a super flexible champion that brings a lot of utility, has a lot of pressure, but he can also operate as a tank and be good at scaling later on. So I think that he is overall probably the most versatile, well-rounded jungler, perhaps of all time. And so, I mean, I guess like maybe Sejuani is kind of in that conversation too, but Sejuani's been nerfed so hard over time, and for some reason Jarvan has avoided most nerfs. So there are some metas in pro where you don't see him as much. I do think he's making a little bit of a comeback, but not enough to where you should really be worried about him. He only had a 47% win rate in the last tournament, and he only has about a 52% win rate here with a 9% or a 10% rather presence. So I think that that makes a really, really good one-trick candidate. He's just going to be good in a lot of metas. There are even some metas where he can be flexed to top lane. We haven't seen that in a while, but in the past he has been able to go top lane sometimes as well. There was one meta where people were trying him out with support with like Aerie. I never really bought into that, but it was a thing. But he has been flexed in the top sometimes, although I don't think that's as successful right now. It could happen again in the future. Kha'Zix is another one. He's a lot less versatile, but he is extremely good at what he does, and that's, you know, 1v1, assassinate, you know, snowball. So if you get very good on him, if you get very good at positioning, picking people off, building on your leads, he can be very strong. He does take dragons and barons extremely fast. Now, Baron's a bit tougher because he's not tanky and he doesn't get any lifesteal really, but he does take the early dragons really quickly in the scuttles. And he's pretty good at dueling, which is nice. So I think he's the best assassin in the jungle, and he does snowball super hard. That invisibility, when you jump over a wall invisible and you just blow somebody up, there's very, very limited counterplay to that if he's fed. So they have nerfed him over time a little bit, but I still think that he's good. And he's just pretty much always going to be relevant. Even when it's not an assassin meta, you'll still see him sitting around like 52% win rate. So he does run the risk. When assassins are really good, he is kind of over the top. So if assassins do come back in a really big way, then you might see him banned a lot more. Like sometimes his ban rate jumps up to, you know, 20 or 30% in an assassin meta. So that can be a risk. But overall, I think he's going to be pretty strong. And then Elise is the final one that I'll mention here. And Elise is very versatile. She is really strong. I don't think she doesn't have that much presence. She's got 68 in a recent tournament, so you got to be a little careful there. But in solo queue overall, she goes largely unnoticed. People pick and ban Lee Sin way more than they ban and pick Elise, and I think that Elise a lot of times can just be a better version of Lee Sin. So she's sitting around like 22%, but she's magic damage out of the jungle. And that's something I didn't mention about sort of my top lane picks as well, is I really heavily favor magic damage, particularly at higher elo brackets, just because a lot of the popular picks in most roles are going to be physical damage. And you want to make sure that you have a really good distribution of damage. You don't want like all physical damage. And most junglers, most popular junglers, or at least many of them, and a decent chunk of most top laners and a decent chunk of mid laners are going to be physical damage. So you have to have, I think, at least when you think about jungle, mid, and top lane, you need at least 2 of those to be AP to have a really balanced comp, I think. So it's really nice if you can play stuff that is AP in one of those lanes. So Elise is one of the better AP junglers. I think that's going to be really strong. So she has great early game clear. She's pretty safe. She can let the spiders tank a lot. She does take dragons really quickly with the spiders as well. She's the best tower diver early on because she can repel and drop aggro on the tower off of a dive. So she's excellent at like level 3 dives. She does have some utility later on with that cocoon. If you do land that, it can start fights. She has range, so she can help auto-attack towers if she needs to. She's a very good duelist. You know, if she lands that cocoon on someone out of a bush, they're probably going to die. She has a ton of burst damage. So, like most assassin, early game, skirmisher type of champ, she does fall off later, you know, compared to a tank. But I think that she has so much versatility early on compared to some of the other picks. And I think that she's easier mechanically to play than some of the other ones as well. That I think that she should definitely be mentioned in the one tricks. And she's pretty much always relevant. They almost never nerf her items out. You know, she builds like runic echoes and things like Leandries, and a lot of that stuff is not going to get nerfed. Versus if you're trying to pit, you know, someone like Kha'Zix, for example, who builds a lot of lethality. Lethality is almost always under the microscope. It is always a possibility lethality could be nerfed because when it's too strong, it does get abused a lot, and it does get a lot of attention. Okay. Gold minus, so I think Master Yi, obviously, you know, you just kind of have to mention Master Yi. If you're not, you're trolling in any one-trick video. That champion is just ridiculous when he gets ahead in gold minus. I mean, even in Plat Plus, he has a 53% win rate right now, and he's only got, like, pretty close to a 25% presence. So, and once again, he's very, very close to kind of the definition of one-trick, right? Like, 0 pro presence, under 25%. Presence in solo queue, pretty versatile runes and itemization. You know, a lot of times right now he is going Conquer. He can go press the attack if Conquer ever gets nerfed. As far as his items, there's a bunch of different stuff you can get. I mean, Ginsu's is pretty core on him. But, you know, he can get Ginsu's. He can get Blather and King. There are some builds where he actually goes crit, where in the past he's gone like things like Infinity Edge. Just a bunch of different stuff you can get with him and be really effective. Proficient in a lot of different metas. All he needs are items. He just kind of power farms early on. He doesn't have great ganking, and he is vulnerable to CC. Those are kind of the 2 knocks against him, but he does scale better than almost anyone, and he can 1v9 games if he gets far enough ahead. So he can itemize into resilience if he needs it. He does have that meditation to block, you know, major damage spikes as well and to heal up a little bit. Super high damage and really strong mobility. You know, he has his Alpha Strike to go untargetable, to dodge a lot of skill shots. He also has really fast movement speed with his ult. He can't be slowed while he's ulting. So a lot of things there. There is counterplay to him if you CC him, but, you know, he can also dodge that CC a lot of times unless you have a point click with his Alpha Strike. So there are certain champions that really dumpster him. You know, Nautilus and, like, Rakan, if they get a hold of him and just chain CC him, he can get blown up. But overall, he's still going to be a really, really strong champ, especially in a really high kill environment. So the lower the elo goes, the more kills that are going on, the better he's going to be. So I still think he's going to be really, really good. Shaco is another one that almost always has a 52 or a 53% win rate. He's very flexible as well. He can go AD, he can go AP. I've even seen some metas where he's gone Trinity Force in the past. So there's a lot of different things you can do with him. He has great early game ganks with his smoke. You know, he can appear invisible, pick people off. He does take dragons really quickly with his clone. He takes towers really quickly with his clone. So he can split push. He can take objectives. He ganks really well early on. He can go AD. He can go AP. There's so many different things you can do with him that can be very effective. So I think Shaco's another one that definitely deserves a mention here. And then Nunu is the final one that I'll mention for gold. He's almost always relevant. Excellent tank champion. Very safe clear. Takes dragons really quickly. Provides a lot of utility for your team. You know, his ultimate does a ton of damage. Has great zoning potential. You've got awesome ganks early on with the snowball. You can gank through lane to get around the wards. Really good itemization options. You know, you can get things like Knight's Vow if you need to help your AD carry out. Your passive Blood Boil does give a lot of extra auto attack speed to your AD carry. So you have quite a good assortment of little buffs that you can give your team. So I think that makes him a really solid champ. And then he has almost no pro presence as well, and he's really not picked ban. It's like 4% presence in solo queue. So I think he's going to be really solid. And it's difficult to ban him out too. There's a bunch of different items, a bunch of different runes, or nerf him out, I should say. Bunch of different items, bunch of different runes. So very flexible. Now some honorable mentions here. I will say Lee Sin, you know, is going to be one that a lot of people mention. But kind of like Yasuo, the guy is, you know, picked and banned a ton. I think he's the most popular jungler pretty much always. Even if he's terrible, he's still going to be the most popular. He's very fun to play. But yeah, right here you can see pretty much has 59% presence. So there's going to be a lot of games where you can't play him. So that kind of sucks. And he does get pro play from time to time. And when he does, he doesn't get nerfed that often. But there is always a threat if he gets played too much in pro that he could be nerfed. So there's the potential for that. Rengar is another one that I really wanted to put on there. I couldn't find a slot for him. Maybe you could go Rengar instead of Nunu. But I do think that Rengar is really strong and is very underrated right now. His win rate is okay. It's like 50%. He doesn't actually have that much presence. And one really nice thing about Rengar, too, is he can be flexed to top. You don't see that a lot, but I've seen it a few times. And every time I've seen it, it's been pretty good. I've even seen him bot lane sometimes, which can be pretty good. I think that even Bjergsen and Dardoch were trying like an Ivern middle Rengar jungle. That's kind of like the hottest, you know, like all caps video that people are talking about as of the making of this video. So we'll see. He can be flexed to some different places. It's mostly jungle. I think top is legit in certain matchups. Other places a little bit less so, but he just has, you know, really a lot of early game power with the bushes. The new Water Dragon buff, when that shows up on the map, which is going to be in 25% of games, he gets a huge boost out of that, obviously. And he's just really good at picking people off. You know, in solo queue, there's going to be a lot of people, you know, the support's just walking around trying to ward by themselves, or you've got this person, like the ADC, is just kind of mindlessly splitting a side lane and not paying attention. And Rengar is just really, really good at picking that off. Just has some of the highest burst damage in the game if you get a hold of people. So yeah, pretty short cooldown on his ult too, I think. So he just snowballs out of control, gets really far ahead. He can take objectives really quickly because he's an auto-attacking, you know, physical damage dealer. So he can take dragons pretty quickly. He can take barons pretty quickly, takes towers. So I think he is really versatile. He can have a tougher time in a tank meta, you know, with a lot of CC, kind of like Kha'Zix. But he can be pretty good. Now, I have him a little bit lower than Kha'Zix, just because Kha'Zix can come out, like, with true invisibility, jumping behind a wall, and nobody can see him coming unless you have, you know, it warded. Whereas with Rengar, you get a warning when he's coming in, right? He's going to have the little, you know, thing on him, and then that allows the support to be on alert, the AD carry to be on alert, to potentially outplay him. So I think there is a bit more outplay potential to Rengar, but he's also going to have a better potential to run people down in macro than Kha'Zix would. So he can, like, rotate to different situations and clean up kills a lot faster than Kha'Zix can. But both of them are going to be really strong. You know, maybe you could make an argument Rengar should be higher, or should take the place of Kha'Zix because he can be flexed into top lane, and Kha'Zix can't really be flexed these days, but Rengar is really, really good. So it's tough. You know, it's tough only picking 3 people in there, but I think that he is really good. Now, Warwick is another one who, low elo, you could sub him in for Nunu if you want to. He is super strong. Just recently, he has kind of surpassed Nunu. he does have some pretty strong carry potential. You know, he can run down and clean up a lot of, you know, solo queue clown fiestas with his blood scent. So I do think that Warwick can be pretty good. He can itemize tank later as well. Vi is another similar one. Excellent point-click ultimate. Great engage. Great skirmishing. She can itemize Trinity Force into tank items as well and be very effective. Takes dragons super fast with her denting blows early on. So if you can get good dragon control, she can be very strong. Has pretty strong clear as well. So is somewhat one-dimensional, right? Like, people have a lot of notice when you're coming in and you're ulting them. That gives a lot of your team time to prepare to try to peel. But if she does get far ahead, she can pretty much one-shot people as well. So, once again, kind of like Rengar, a little bit more counterplay than some of the other options out there, but she still is going to be very, very strong, particularly in the gold minus bracket. And then Echo's kind of the flavor of the month right here, especially for Platinum Plus. I think he is really strong. I don't know how long this is going to last. He does have like a 40% presence. He's not played a lot in Pro, so there's that. But he does have 40% presence. With a 53% win rate. So that ban rate's not quite high enough to put him on the watch list. But he is really, really strong right now. So I don't think he's going to get nerfed in the near term. It's possible. So if you want to play someone who's like meta right now at the very start of Season 10 and is super strong and is probably not going to get nerfed for 3 or 4 patches, Echo would maybe be one of your best choices. But if you're thinking like 6 months or 7 months down the line, is he in danger of getting nerfed? Potentially. So I don't know. Echo's kind of a coin flip, but if you want to play something the here and the now that's really good, that has a medium chance of getting banned, then Echo could be your guy. Now, once again, 40% presence, though, so you're not going to get him every game, but he can be really strong. Okay. Mid lane. And we'll have to go through these once again a little bit faster, maybe 10 minutes a pop here to get through the last couple ones. So Kiana, I still think is going to be really strong right now. She is getting played quite a lot in Pro. She has been nerfed. But in solo queue, it's not that bad. I mean, if we look at Kiana, that's jungle Kiana. Let's go to all Kianas here. If we go to all Kianas, I mean, it's only like a 17% play rate. Overall, she has a lot of mobility. She does a ton of damage. She has excellent team fighting, which is rare for an assassin, but that ultimate in a team fight can completely wreck everybody if you get a really good ult line up against the walls. Excellent rotation. She moves really quickly. Oftentimes, she has so much damage, she can even go mobility boots and rotate. So she just has great macro. I think she still has pretty good wave clear. I'm not 100%. I think they did nerf her wave clear as part of the Pro nerfs. But I feel like she still has all right wave clear. Just excellent single target damage. She can escape pretty well too. She has several different dashes. She can go invisible with the grass. So she's got good mobility for escapes, good mobility for roams, excellent single target burst damage, really good team fight presence. I mean, there's a reason, right, that she has a 70% win rate and a 75% play rate in recent tournaments. So she's really, really good. Although, as you can see from solo queue people not quite as good on her. But I think that makes for an excellent one trick. The only reservation there about her is, once again, you got to be careful because she might get banned. Even though she doesn't have an 80% presence, 75% presence, 70% win rate, you know, that still is it's questionable, right, for pro play balance. So we'll see. But I think for right now, she's pretty good. She's not played as much in the jungle. As you saw, her jungle win rate was abysmal in solo queue, but you might be able to still play her in the jungle. I'm not sure about the nerfs that they made to her. I think they took down her her clear speed or damage to monsters. But it is possible that maybe you could flex her jungle and you might be able to flex her top lane. So the fact that she has some flex options is pretty nice. You could probably get away with her top lane against a lot of matchups, but obviously mid lane's going to be her her favorite spot. Sorry, Sadie, what do you want? So I think she's really good. Cassiopeia is another one that doesn't get played. Like, when Cassio's like OP, she is played all the time in Pro, but she still has some presence, 53% presence, 53% win rate. It's going to be pretty solid. And then in solo queue, she's usually hovering around like 50% win rate. Sometimes she gets higher, 52%. When she was really OP, like last spring, she had like a 54% win rate. So she's a little bit on the risky side, but, you know, in solo queue here, once again, it's not that bad. Like, it's not enough to draw a ton of attention right now in terms of nerfs. And she only has, like, a 15% overall presence. So, once again, very, very good. Now, the thing about her is she does not rotate very well, okay? So, if you're against somebody who's going to be roaming a lot, like a Kiana, that can be a problem. You need to be able to take teleport for that. But she does scale extremely well, and she takes objectives super well. So she's going to be able to just melt Barons if she gets ahead. And she has a lot of outplay potential on enemies, right? She's got her her ultimate, obviously, to stone people when they try to come in. And then she has movement speed from her Q if she takes Phase Rush, which is the most popular. Well, I think people have switched over to Conquer on her and are still running Conquer. But she can run Phase Rush, she can run Conquer, she's flexible in that bit. But either way, she does get movement speed off of her Q, and then her W, the Miasma, does stop a lot of enemy movement speed. So she doesn't have the highest burst damage in the game, but she has some of the highest sustained damage in the game. So I think she's very good. She's very flexible, excellent against tanks, but has decent play against a lot of matchups, especially shorter range champs. So I think when you get really proficient on Cassiopeia, that she can be really strong in most metas. And then finally, Talia. Now this one's going to seem a little unusual because she doesn't have a ton of presence right now in solo queue. There is, in pro, there is some, right? Like 13%. She did win 63% of the time, but there's not a lot of that. And that probably was jungle. I don't think people would play her mid and pro right now. But she is very under the radar. But she still has good wave clear. She has excellent roam with her wall. She's still 52% win rate. Virtually no presence at all. Less than a 2% presence. She can even be flexed into support sometimes. Now, I don't think she's amazing as support, but if you're a one-trick, if you have like 1,000 games on Talia, you can probably make her work in support. And then I still think she's a pretty decent jungler as well. They have nerfed her jungle some, but so she can be flexed realistically into 2 roles, but then like if you're pushing it, maybe even a 3rd role. So just excellent burst damage, like pretty good sustained damage, really good utility with her wall, great roaming. Really kind of hurts a lot of champs that can't jump over that wall when you try to rotate. So things like Misfortune, things like Nautilus that are going to have to flash the wall or die. It's just a really unique kind of CC that she has, similar to Jarvan, where it's very difficult to get out of it for immobile champs that are really popular right now. So I think I think she's a pretty good pick to try to pick up. And once again, her items are the types of items, like I mentioned with a few other champions, the Leandries, you know, that type of build, the Leandries, Merlinomicon, Rylai's. Those types of things are not that likely to get nerfed. And I know at least a few patches ago they were testing on the PBE, those items might actually get buffed. We'll see. Now, they did scrap it. It's not currently like we haven't seen any plans for them to buff them, but they have talked about it several times. They might buff those items. So she would be a huge beneficiary of that. And then as far as gold minus, I think that Malzahar is always going to be really good. It's got excellent push, point click, lockdown suppression, can't be cleansed, can't be Mikhail's. They have to get a Quicksilver Sash. Good silence for team fights. He's got the minions to help him push, take towers, take dragons. Once again, he's on that Leandries type of build, sort of like Talia. So I think he's an excellent pick right now. Very safe, very easy to play. It's kind of like Darius. You might get bored playing him because there aren't that many mechanics, but he can be very effective. Pretty much always has like a 52 or 53% win rate. Just a really solid champ overall. Ahri also is going to be really solid. Great wave clear. Excellent roaming. She has 3 different dashes. Great at outplaying skill shots the enemy team might be trying to throw at you with those dashes. Good charm for engages. So I think she's going to be pretty solid as well. And then finally, the last one that I'll mention is Fizz. One of the few sort of AP assassins that just does a ton of burst damage. LeBlanc's probably the other one out there, but the fact that he can dodge a lot of things with his Playful Trickster so that even point clicks don't work on him makes him very, very strong. Usually if you land that fish on somebody, they're pretty much dead because you're going to come in with your Playful Trickster and land on them, and it's going to be a one-shot. So there's not a lot of counterplay if he hits the fish. So you got to get good vision control, hit those fishes out of bushes and things like that. But if you do, he can be very, very strong. Excellent access to the back line, so he has the Playful Trickster, and he has his dash with his Q, and often he will itemize into Zanya's Hourglass as well. So he's just a real pest to try to lock down. Typically gets Proto Belt also. So tons and tons of mobility, 2 different ways to go invulnerable with Hourglass, with Playful Trickster. So I think he's going to be one of the better assassins out there as well. Also, he's AP, so you don't have to worry about overstacking AD if you were to try to do like Zed or Talon, and your jungler wants to do Graves and your top laner wants to do Riven or something like that. You can avoid that situation by picking an AP middle. Okay, honorable mentions. Diana. So this is very similar to Echo, where there's no data on her for pro play yet because she was banned from the Kespa Cup tournament because she was a new rework, so we don't have any data on that yet for pro play. But for solo queue, she's looking really, really strong. So if you look at Diana here, she's got like a 39% presence and 26% ban rate with almost a 53% win rate. So that's not quite enough to meet Riot's definition of OP. She's riding the fence. She does kind of have an abuse case with Ardent Sensor right now. That's probably going to get patched, I think, in a couple of patches. But she's going to have really versatile itemization. You can do, you know, a tankier like Rod of the Ages and the Nashers. You can do a more burst-oriented with like Proto Belt, Lichbane. I think the Rod and the Nashers is the most popular build right now. But she's got a lot of different things she can do. She can probably do Conquer. She can do Electrocute. Heck, she might even be able to do things like press the attack if you're going the attack speed build. That's probably not as good. But there are a lot of different things you can get on her, and the rework has made her much, much stronger. She has more mobility. She's a lot safer in the laning phase, and she has a lot more team fight presence with her ultimate now. So I've seen a lot of really powerful Dianas out there. So I'm just a little scared that she's going to get nerfed. So that's why I have her a bit lower, because once again, I'm trying to read into the future, not just what's good in the next patch or two, but what's going to be good, you know, 10 patches from now down the line. And so if you're just looking for what's going to be really strong over the next little bit, kind of like Echo, she's got about 40% presence. A lot of people think she's too strong, but statistically, maybe not strong enough to get nerfed. We'll see. But yeah, she's going to be on the watch list. Rumble is another one. I don't think Rumble's highly likely to get nerfed. I'm not really sure why he has been searching up in pro play lately. He has almost no presence in solo queue. A lot of people have been playing in mid in pro. He actually has quite a bit of presence. Let's see here if we're doing... Actually, it's not that bad. It's 27%, but he did have a 65% win rate, so we'll see. I don't fully understand it, but once again, he's on that Leandri's, Rylai's type of train, so good itemization, could get buffed in the future, so maybe I should put Rumble up there. You know, you could maybe sneak him into the Plat Plus or Gold Minus. I'm just really not sure because he's a very new phenomenon. I love Rumble as a champ. He was one of my favorites. He was my one trick back in Season 2 when I played top lane. So he can be very, very effective. Excellent wave clear with his flamethrower. Extremely good team fight damage because his flamethrower does huge AoE damage with his ultimate. So we'll see. I know people might pick him because he has I think he would have a good matchup into Akali, but Akali was permabanned basically in most games, but like the flamethrower can still hit her even though she might be in her shroud. So maybe it was just a matchup thing. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to do more analysis, and I've been watching some of the games, but I haven't really like in-depth studied some of the stuff like that. But Rumble could still be really strong in the future. It could just be a flavor of the month. We'll see. But yeah, Rumble could be a good candidate. Katarina, especially in low reload brackets, is really good. She is abusing Conquer, so if Conquer gets nerfed, she may not be as strong. Although Electrocute can still make her really strong as well. So Katarina as always has the potential to be really strong, but she does require Snowball, and she is very, very vulnerable to CC, and she can get blown up. So she has kind of a rough laning phase as well. But if you do get ahead, she can be very strong. Kassadin is another one who's getting a lot of attention right now. He's not getting played in pro that much, but a lot of people are grumbling about him in solo queue, as people tend to do with Kassadin. So doesn't have a huge amount of you know, statistics here, right? Like he's got 25% presence, 53% win rate. So he would make a pretty decent one trick. I think he does have like trouble into some of the AD matchups, like Kiana, like Zed, like Talon. But he still is very, very strong right now, so he could be a good candidate. It's just he's one of those champs where when he starts to get really good, he often will get nerfed. So we will see. I think they nerfed him last patch, actually, a little bit. They gave him like a slap on the wrist. So once again, you know, as I've said before, just because a champion doesn't meet those exact statistical requirements that I just said with the dev thing doesn't mean that it can't be nerfed, right? Or doesn't mean that it can't be buffed. Like, yeah, on 924, they reduced his mana coming back, so he doesn't get as much free mana there. And they increased the cooldown on his Q at early ranks by 2. So they have nerfed him a little bit in the last patch. And, you know, those stats aren't anywhere close to what they described in the dev blog, right? Like, he only has less than a 53% play rate and less than an 18% ban rate. So it doesn't mean that you're 100% safe, you know, just like I said, because of Mordekaiser and Diana and stuff like that. It's like, well, they don't quite have the 35 or 36% ban rate or whatever. So maybe they won't get nerfed. It's like, if something feels like it's OP and a lot of people are playing it, or a lot of people are crying about it, it's likely going to get nerfed. And then Xerath is the other one. Xerath's kind of like, if you're extremely good on him, there's almost no counterplay if you hit everything. But he's very, very difficult to play because you have to hit everything to be effective on him. And you're so vulnerable to flanks and like high mobility champions. He's really risky. But if you are super good on him, he can work well. Okay, let's talk about the bot lane here. So Kai'Sa is going to be sort of the all-time one-trick champion. Now, she does not have a great win rate right now overall. Oops. Over here on this one. Doesn't have a good win rate overall, and it's been that way for a long time, though, where she's had like a 49% win rate. She's got like 23% presence overall. She's still winning some in pro. She's not as popular as she was. But she still won 56% of the time in recent tournaments. So the thing that makes Kai'Sa so strong is that she scales really hard with attack speed and auto. So everyone knows when she has Gensu's late game, she takes over. But she also has like okay laning phase. It's not insane, but she can do damage. Isolated Q does a lot of damage. If she hits the W, it does a lot of damage. If she procs her passive, it does a lot of damage. So if you have someone on your team like a Leona or a Nautilus who's very popular right now and they're applying a lot of CC, that's going to be stacking up your passive. And so if you can go in there and just land, you know, an auto attack. I think she's taking PTA these days, press the attack. I'm not 100% about that. She's versatile. She can take a whole bunch of different things. Yeah, a lot of times she has taken PTA. So yeah, I mean, if you trigger PTA, you're passive, and you get isolated missiles, you can almost one-shot somebody, you know, at level 2. So she can do a lot of damage if you're really good on her, right? If you hit your W, if you get those isolated Qs, she can do a ton of damage. And she's very, very flexible with the itemization, too. You know, right now, she's getting Stormrazor, typically Stormrazor into Gensu's, and then go from there. In the past, she has gone Manamune into Gensu's. She can go AP a little bit with, like, Nashers, or at least attack speed / AP with Nashers. So she can get a lot of these items that kind of cheat the curve. So I say, like, Nashers is a lot of stats for 3,000 gold. It's very, very efficient. Like 150% efficient or something. 130 to 150% efficient. But a lot of champions can't use it because attack speed plus ability power is just a really weird combination on most champs outside of things like Azir. So she can just use, and she can even take weird defensive items like Zhonya's Hourglass, you know, that a lot of AD carries can't typically take. So she's just the most flexible AD carry, I think, in terms of overall building. Like, it's just almost impossible to nerf her out in terms of items because there's just so many different things she can take. She has all sorts of different runes. She can take, you know, she can take PTA, she can take Conquer, she can take Fleet. There's a lot of different stuff there you can do with her. And like I said, she has okay damage early on in the right circumstances and extremely high scaling later on into the game. She's got the invisibility with her dash. It's going to be hard to get a hold of her. And then you've got her ult to reposition yourself, dodge things, give yourself a big shield, get those isolations on the back line. And just really high damage that she pumps out with her passive and her auto attacks. So very, very good overall. Pretty much always there in pro play for the most part, and still going to be pretty good in solo queue if you're very proficient on her. Almost everybody who's a high level AD carry, like in Challenger and all those people, all of them have games on Kai'Sa. She's very, very strong. Xayah's the other one, and Xayah has been nerfed out a little bit more lately, but she's still going to be really good. And it's sort of similar to Kai'Sa in a sense, right? It's got an okay early game. She does have more wave clear early on than Kai'Sa does. And if you do land that root, it is quite a bit of burst damage. Excellent in team fights with her feathers. Great zoning potential. Her ultimate allows you to get out of a lot of situations. Now, they did nerf her ult. They increased its cooldown by like 40 seconds early on in the game. So you can get punished a lot more if you use your ultimate. If you get forced into a bad situation, have to blow your ult early. So, however, Rakan, I think, is still pretty strong overall, especially in pro. Now, she did not have a good tournament. Not a huge sample size, but she didn't have a great tournament there at 32%. Her itemization is a little bit more suspect. She can't really use Storm Razor that well. It's okay, you know. I still think you would want to go like Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge on her most likely, but she's still gonna be good. You know, good wave clear, good team fighting, pretty good sort of defensive capabilities with her ultimate. So I still think she's gonna be worth one-tricking overall, and she'll be pretty strong. And then Varus is another one that I'll mention here. And kind of higher elo, and he was kind of, I think, the AD carry of the tournament. Maybe his Misfortune was the AD carry of the tournament overall, but Varus was someone that I definitely didn't see coming either, and he had a good tournament, not as good as Misfortune. But he's just a champ that has a lot of utility overall, and you've just seen him a lot in pro play. Like, there are definitely some metas where you don't see him at all, but there's just a lot of different items you can get on him and a lot of different builds people have done over time. So the most common one has been the attack speed build, right? Where you have Gensu's plus Blade the Ruined King, Hurricane, and things like that to stack up your blight stacks faster. So that's been a really common build. But in the past, we've also seen like a lethality build with him, like this poke Legolas type of build, which has been nerfed out. But I think they might be buffing it next patch, actually, his arrow a little bit, so we'll see how that goes. But in the past, we have seen where he just tries to snipe people out with his Q, and he has great wave clear. And this basically turns into, like, a heavier hitting Ezreal with his arrows. And he just has that ult, which is so strong in team fights. It does disable a single target, but the big thing is it spreads and hits multiple targets as well. And he gets a huge steroid whenever he gets an assist in a fight, a kill or an assist. He just starts going off and does massive damage with his super auto attack speed. And he also has a built-in Grievous Wounds with his E, which is also like a decent slow at a fairly long range. So he just has a lot of utility in his kit. There are a lot of different builds you can do with him. He does have a pretty long auto attack range too at 575. So it's not Caitlyn, it's not Senna, but it's longer than a lot of other AD carries out there. And his ult's on a really low cooldown too. Excuse me. So I think overall that makes him pretty good. You could make an argument. There are other AD carries that can be really good if you're proficient on them. You know, Draven, I decided to put him at gold minus. He can be like really good at plat plus too. But I just think that there are a lot of different situations where if you're really proficient on Varus, then he can be strong as well. Okay, let's talk about gold minus. Misfortune could also go up there too. I think she's kind of a flavor of the month in pro. I would have never thought to see Misfortune that prominent in a pro level game. It's been a long time since we've seen Misfortune like dominate this hard in pro. But she's actually shown, people are discovering more and more about her that she actually is quite versatile. So you definitely could put her in Plat Plus as well. She's very easy to play though, and she has great team fighting with her ultimate. She has awesome poke with her Q in the laning phase. But right now, a lot of people are going crit on her, right? They're going like an Essence Reaver into Infinity Edge build. And that huge crit damage off of your Q is just absolutely massive. I just did a full Misfortune guide recently, so be sure to check that out on the channel where I do some of the math for you on there. But those Q hits are massive early on. She has great poke. It's cheap. It's affordable. Her ultimate does huge damage. Those waves can crit as well. Great utility with her E. It's a point-click slow, can't miss, AoE. It can slow a lot of people. And so that's really, really good for setting up skill shots. So if you put like a Misfortune Make It Rain on somebody, let's say a Kaisa or whatever, and she doesn't have her E available to get out of it, or if you put it on an immobile AD carry like a Varus, and he just has to try to walk out of it, that means that your Leona or your Nautilus is almost certainly going to hit their engage, and you're going to be able to blow them up. So I think that she can be really, really strong. And then, of course, in the past, we've seen Lethality Misfortune as well. It's not as popular lately, but that is on the table. If they ever buff Lethality, she can do that. And we even saw like a Blade of the Ruined King Misfortune with Press the Attack earlier this year, which was pretty unusual, but it did end up having a pretty high win rate as well. So there's just a lot of different things about her. And she has really good mobility in terms of macro mobility. So she can rotate around the map really, really well off of her strut. It gives a ton of... It's basically like you get free Moby boots around the map. And it also gives a ton of extra attack speed. So I think that she could be on the chopping block to get nerfed. But she is very versatile in that sense, in terms of her items, in terms of her runes. So she does have that going for her. But if they were going to nerf her, I would say the most likely things they would nerf, they could nerf her ult damage. I don't know if they're going to do that, but they might nerf the Q, especially like the guaranteed crit after it bounces is kind of brutal. So they might take that off, or they might at least like increase the mana cost, or just something with their Q, maybe the AD ratio on it. I could see them nerfing something with Q, or her strut. Either the movement speed or the attack speed off a strut would be something that they might want to hit. So I would not be surprised if it's like this for the next few weeks. She might get nerfed out. But because she's so versatile, I could mention, I think she'll still be good, especially at gold minus. Draven is another one. He just hits super hard, hits like a truck, ton of free damage off his axes. A lot of people don't respect it, and if he does get kills early, he starts snowballing super hard. So in a Clown Fiesta type of meta where everyone's always running around and dying, he's going to be extremely good at that because he's going to get a lot of extra gold off of those kills. And he's pretty versatile as itemization, too. You know, you can go Bloodthirster is very common on him. Go Storm Razor. You can go Infinity Edge. Been some metas where he even goes Death's Dance. So, pretty good versatility overall on him. Excellent early game domination. Excellent single target damage later on. People forget he doesn't fall off. Like, he has a lot of single target damage. The one thing where he can have some problems with later on in the game is he doesn't have a ton of utility other than, like, stand aside. So he doesn't have as much utility as someone like Varus or Xayah. He's single target. So he doesn't have anything that does like AoE damage in his kit. He doesn't optimize into Hurricane. You know, things like Kaisa can do, or Varus can do Hurricane with their their like stack abilities. Kaisa's passive and Varus's W. They can do Hurricane to do a lot more damage. I actually forgot. No, I do have Twitch on there. I'll talk about it. Did I forget Twitch? Speaking of Hurricane. No, he's down. He'll be the next one. Sadie. But yeah, he's really good. Great early game bully. Great snowball potential. Great scaling for single target DPS. And then finally, Twitch is the last one that I'll mention. And Twitch still can do pretty well in some metas in like Platinum. He starts to fall off a bit in Diamond, but not the most amazing early game. It's okay. If they all in you and you get to stack a lot of poison, he can do a lot of damage. But that invisibility later on is just huge. You can pick people off. If you catch the support, you know, trying to roam and ward by herself, you can kill her. Or if the enemy ADC is trying to split and get a side lane, kind of like Rengar, almost any invisible champion is going to find something to prey on in solo queue. So that can help him get back into the game, even if he falls behind the laning phase. Then he has excellent team fight as well. Just AoE, massive damage with his ultimate. He is vulnerable while he's channeling that. He can get focused out, but it's just insane damage if he has a couple of items. And then he's pretty versatile with his items as well. He does like to go Blade of the Ruined King, Hurricane, Infinity Edge, typically. But he can get Infinity Edge early if he has to. So if they, for some reason, they nerf out Blade of the Ruined King or they nerf Infinity Edge, he has a couple of different builds he can go that can still be really effective. So I think he's great. Now, a couple of honorable mentions here. I will say that Lucian right now is super hot and super powerful for the most part. He's like 60%. He was, like, for the first few rounds of this tournament, he was permabanned, but they started letting him through later on. But yeah, he's going to be super strong. Lucian's surprisingly been pretty versatile as well. You know, he used to go kind of like Black Cleaver type of build. I forgot what it was. A Blade of the Ruined King and a Black Cleaver with Press the Attack was really strong, and he was very, very good when the runes got reworked. But now he's going more of a crit-oriented build with Essence Reaver into Infinity Edge, which is very strong. So he has a lot of versatility there in terms of his itemization. Excellent early game pressure, does a ton of damage, scales super well with press the attack. His big problem is later on, he's very short range, and he doesn't do a ton of AoE damage in fights. It's okay. If he channels his ult, he can do quite a bit of damage. Back when he had Black Cleaver, he could put Cleaver all over the enemy with his ultimate, which is very good if you had a bunch of AD on your team. So he does have decent utility. It's just that late game, he's short range, and he doesn't have AoE. So not as good at team fights. But early game, he is one of the most dominant. And, you know, right now at least, we are in a very early game-centric meta. His wave clear is also a little bit suspect. You know, the Q is okay later on, but because he doesn't get Hurricane and doesn't have, like, just AoE stuff that can clear, like Kai'Sa's missiles or Xayah's feathers or, like, Varus's arrow, it can take him a little bit longer to clear waves, which means he's not going to be able to rotate and to get priority as much. But he is very, very dominant early on. Aphelios, jury's out on that one. There's no data on him for the tournament because he was a new release, so we don't have the pro data yet. The general consensus in solo queue, though, is that he is extremely strong. So, and he was nerfed on the last patch. He does have a 60% ban rate right now with a 53% win rate. So, highly expect he's going to get nerfed again. If he doesn't, he can be very good. To be honest with you, just a lot of people aren't that great on him yet, and he still has a 53% win rate, so I think he's probably a bit too strong. But if he gets, you know, if he makes it through the nerfs and doesn't get, like, shut out too hard, then he can be very effective. I don't know enough about, like, the possibilities with him. Like, I don't know if he's going to be very good with different items or not, or if he really has to have the crit. If there are other options that could be okay on him. I feel like he wants heavy AD items and he wants the crit. Or like his runes. I think he gets PTA. We'll just see. He's so new. People are still discovering new stuff about him and trying to work him out. But it's almost certain that he's going to get more nerfs. Yeah, because he just statistically is too strong. Even though we don't have pro data, just the solo queue data is not looking promising. And then Senna's another one who has been nerfed a lot recently. So she's already been hit several times. She may have made it through the nerfs, and maybe she's going to be able to survive. She's pretty good. She's at about a 50% win rate. She still is banned a lot, though, and picked a lot, so she's got over 40% presence. She is pretty heavily reliant on Manamune being a strong item on her. I don't think that item's likely to get nerfed, but we'll see. So Senna could be a good one trick, but she does have a lot of presence. She is getting played some in pro. She's already been nerfed a few times. So we'll see about that. Ezreal's another one trick who can be really good. I think if you're a god on him, he's great. He has a very suspect early game, which is not amazing. Good kitty. But if you do get really proficient on him, he can be strong. He does have some flexibility in his build. He does have to have Manamune, but he can go Trinity. He can go Iceborne Gauntlet. So he does have some potential there. The Conqueror build's like all right on him. He's not getting played like at all at pro, I don't think. There's one game and someone lost on him, so we'll see. But I think if you are a god on Ezreal, then he can be pretty good. He is, however, like typically a pretty popular champion, even when he's not that great. Yeah, he's still being played 14% of the time. He's not being banned a lot, so he's okay. I think this is one of the weaker states he's been in a while, but you can still be proficient. And then Vayne is someone who's just like the solo queue wonder. You know, she's going to be so popular because people just love playing her. It's a vampire huntress, and she's just really fun to play. She has a lot of mobility, but her laning phase is terrible. Like basically, what it comes down to is Kai'Sa's just a much better Vayne for the most part. Like they're both like not that great in the laning phase, but Kai'Sa at least has abilities that do damage. They both want to auto attack a lot. Later on, they scale really well with attack speed, Gensu's, that type of stuff. But the thing is, Kai'Sa does so much more. You know, she's got her ult to reposition and to get a shield. She's got her missiles for isolation kills. She's got her W for poke if she gets some AP. She has different itemization options. She can get things like Zhonya's and Nashor's. I just think that Kaisa is just the new age Vayne. So they did buff Vayne fairly recently with her, like the damage on her E, but I just think she's too weak in the laning phase. If we go into a super heavy tank meta, she can be really good. So if everyone's picking, you know, Dr. Mundo and Zac every game, then she can be really solid. But I just think she's a bit too risky for solo queue. But if you're a god on her, you know, you can make it work. If you're Gosu, you can definitely make her work. So I just don't think she's going to be the best for everybody out there. I think she's just a bit more meta dependent. And that Kaisa just kind of outmuscles her in a lot of situations. Okay, and the last couple of picks here, damn, this ends up going a lot longer than I thought it would, so it's probably going to scare away a lot of new viewers, but I guess it's thorough. So, for support, I think that Rakan is going to be the best one-trick overall. At least I've got the timestamps in there, though. Rakan's going to be the best one-trick overall. I mean, he just kind of does everything. He has really good engage, really good scaling, because of his shield and its huge ratio that it has on it. Excellent itemization. You know, he can go Zeke's to be partially tanky against assassins. He can go Ardent Sensor to buff up your AD carry even more. He can go Athene's for more pressure in the laning phase. He can itemize into Shirelias for more like speed and utility for your team. He can go almost anything a lot of times and be really effective. There's several different runes he can do too. Right now and for a while it has been Guardian. But in theory, he could take other things like Airy. He could take Unsealed Spellbook. He could take Aftershock. There's a lot of stuff in theory if they nerfed Guardian for some reason that he could take. So he's just super versatile. He peels. He engages. He effectively has 3 different dashes with his W and his 2 E procs. So that allows him to be just to reposition, to rotate, and just be wherever he needs to be in a fight. And the fact that his W is sort of freestanding as well, you don't have to have anyone near you, means he can get really deep vision control and escape. So you can go deep, you know, into their jungle, get the vision on their camps, and even if their jungler shows up, you can probably get away with your W. And if you have to, he can even ult and run out of there at really fast speed if he needs to. So just a super versatile champion, very, very strong. It's, you know, he has been nerfed several times over the years, but he's just always relevant. He is good in pro, but he's not too good in pro for once in his life. He's not too good in pro, which means I think it's unlikely that he's going to get nerfed again in the future. So yeah, 50% win rate, not played a ton, which is great. You don't want him played a ton because he has, I think he's been the most dominant support in pro for the last 3 years. I mean, he has 2 world skins for a reason. 2 out of the last 3 years. He's been like the MVP of Worlds for support. So I think he's going to be very, very strong at Platinum Plus. I think he's pretty good at Gold Minus too, but especially in Platinum Plus he gets better. Nautilus is another one. Now Nautilus is getting a lot of attention. He was buffed a lot last year, so he has 74% presence, but he's only got a 43% win rate right now in Pro. So he's kind of the de facto tank, like hard engage champ. In Pro, he has kind of, I think he has a bad matchup into Tom Kench and Braum, who are both very strong, or are coming back up in Pro. So maybe he gets nerfed off of that, maybe not. In solo queue, it's, you know, he's on the line there. He's got 52% win rate, and then he's got like a 47% presence. So this is one where you can play him, but yeah, he's one of the exceptions there where you might be able to get him in, but he is banned and picked a lot. So to one trick, it's a little dangerous. So, you know, maybe you could sub in someone else like a Leona there who gets a lot less attention, although she still is going to be really popular. But, you know, he's a risky one. There's a decent chance he's going to get nerfed again. He was nerfed, I think, a few patches ago. They took 50 damage off of his level 6 ult. So I don't know what they're going to do in the future with him if they nerf him. They could increase the cooldown on his ult. They could, I don't know, decrease the CC on his passive, like knock off a quarter second on his passive. They buffed that during the season. That's what made him a lot stronger, was I think he started rooting people for like 0.75 seconds instead of 0.5 at early levels. We'll see. But there's a decent chance he could be nerfed. But right now, very strong. Excellent lockdown. Has some of the most CC of any champs out there. Has a point-click ultimate very difficult to outplay, hits multiple targets, does a lot of AoE damage with his E in team fights, has pretty good wave clear with his E as well, so you can get priority in the lane, rotate the dragon, scuttles, things like that. Actually take scuttles by himself pretty quickly because of how much CC he has and how much damage his E does. So he just kind of does it all. Pretty flexible itemization. Typically, you're going to get your run-of-the-mill, like, you know, Zeke's into Knight's Vow, into Locket type of build, but there is the possibility you could go Ardent Censer in some worlds, because you can use Font of Life, and he does have the AoE E to apply Ardent Censer to everybody. He does have a good AP ratio on his Q and his R. It's kind of a troll item. You don't want to get it most of the time, but if you're hard dominating, you have like a 6-0 Kaisa out of the laning phase, it could be an option if you're not dying a lot. So we'll see. He was even played mid a decent chunk at Worlds by Do and B. So he's on a lot of radars right now. So we'll see. But he can still be really, really strong if he doesn't get nerfed. And then Janna is one that I want to mention. And I'm not going to go too far in depth about why Janna's really good. Just check out my support tier list for that. But let me... Janna is actually the most nerfed champion of all time. Fun fact, at least as of a couple of years ago. And she did receive a lot of nerfs since then. But if we can pull up this historical data here. Let me grab this for you guys real quick. This is what you need to look at. She's like almost always 53 or 54%. There are some times she has spiked over 56%. Now that was in the Ardent Censer meta. But there are numerous times where she has gone over 54%. I mean, she's just the highest win rate support of all time. Now, her popularity has gone up a lot over time, but recently not as much. It's less than 10% overall, right? But she still has a pretty high win rate. She's still got like a 54% win rate right now, pretty close, but it's a lot lower. Now, if you're wondering where did she fall off a cliff, that was when they nerfed the shielding items back in Season 8 and sort of the summer apocalypse where they gutted ADCs and they nerfed the crap out of all the enchanters. But she still is going to be very, very strong right now. You know, if you look at her overall stats, she's almost never picked and never banned, like, a very large amount. She almost always has less than 25% presence. So at a 54% win rate, an 8% presence, and she just has so much historical data that justifies why she's really, really strong. So if you want to know more about her and why she's strong, you know, be sure to check out the support tier list because we're out of time. We're already at 1 hour and 30 minutes here. So we're basically out of time. But the general gist is she just scales super hard, and she has a ton of utility for her team. She's got Peel. She gives extra 80 out on her shield. She's got healing. She has a lot of disruption with her tornado and her ult. So there's just a lot of stuff that she does that just makes her very, very strong in solo queue. And especially when you start to get decent AD carries that you can kind of trust, then she starts to get better. So you're not going to see her in pro. She almost never has pro presence outside of Season 7 in the Ardent Censer meta. And you don't see her like a ton in Challenger per se, but she really can start dominating, especially in Platinum and Diamond. She can be really, really good. Now the Challenger supports, Braum and Tom. People asked for this on the last on the last one trick video that I did. I mean, these two are like partners in crime. They're basically have completely dominated the pro scene over the last like 3 years or something. They were out for a lot of last year. Tom Kench has been nerfed like 1 billion times, and people still play him all the time. Braum got nerfed a little bit, and people were playing him. Now, he did have an 80% win rate in the last tournament, only 15% presence, but these peeler tanks are just so good at team fighting, and they're so good on low gold. They have such high base stats that's what makes them really good in Challenger. But you just can't do that in solo queue because they don't scale very well with gold like the enchanters do. I mean, Braum is basically the Janna of Challenger, right? And the main difference there is that Braum doesn't need a lot of items. Janna just has really low base stats. She can get picked off and murdered if she doesn't have a lot of items. She can't face check bushes later. She can't control vision later, but Braum can. And he does a lot of peel, and he has a lot of protection as well. So that's kind of the difference. It's like if you're just going to have bags and bags of gold and you need to rotate around the map and show up to all these clown fiestas and you're getting paid, Janna's going to be better. If you're playing a much tighter game, if you don't have a lot of gold, if the final score is, you know, going to be like 10 to 10, and you really need a strong team fight presence and someone who can face check bushes, Braum's going to be a lot better. So there's that. And then the gold minus, I think that Soraka, Zyra, and Pyke is where I'd want to be. I've been playing Soraka a ton in Platinum and Low Diamond, and she is really, really strong right now. The healing on her is insane. Check out the support tier list for more details on that. But the healing on her is nuts right now. I don't think she's going to get nerfed. A lot of the all caps tier list videos, your pro guides and all that stuff, very, very few people talk about her. Like, nobody respects her. Nobody understands why she's so strong right now. But she's starting to catch on. You know, her win rate has gone at the start of the preseason from like maybe 3%. She's up to 10%. She's at a 54% win rate. But a lot of people still are not rating her very highly. So Analytics here still doesn't have her as challenger rating. Right? And that's Shaco support as challenger, you know, but they're still just calling her master tier, so they don't think she's as good as some of the other champs out there. So people are starting to figure out that she's really good. But
hello, Daddy.
Hi, Rory. But she has no pro presence, and she has very low presence right now in solo queue. May change in the future. As of right now, she's super strong though. Zyra is another one that is very rarely played in pro, but she does a ton of damage. She can completely dominate the laning phase, especially in lower elo brackets where it's easier to hit her E on people and where people don't respect her damage, don't respect her poke. Excellent team fight potential with her ult as well. Kind of like some of these other champs I mentioned, she has the Leandries plus Rylai package there, which is likely to get buffed, I think, in the next 10 patches or so. So I think she's going to be great. Excellent vision control, too, with her plants. That's something a lot of people underestimate. And then the final one that I'll mention is Pyke. Pyke has been nerfed a lot, but in a meta where people are constantly running around dying, and you can kind of, you know, people are staying too long at low health around towers and stuff like that, I think that he can really start snowballing out of control and do quite well. So he is a bit more vulnerable to poke. That's where they nerfed him in the laning phase. But if he is one of the highest snowball champs in the game because he generates so much extra gold for his team with his ultimate. Then the honorable mentions, I'll put Thresh in here. This is one of the first times with these types of tier lists where I don't have Thresh in one of the main categories, and the reason is I just think he's not good. He's just been nerfed. Maybe it's not that he's been nerfed a lot, it's that other champs have been buffed so much that they've kind of made him irrelevant. Most notably Nautilus. I think now if Nautilus gets nerfed a ton, maybe Thresh comes back up. But the problem with Thresh is he's just not that good with items. Like, he has really low base armor. People forget that about him, is his base armor is super low, and he doesn't get any armor per level. He only gets armor by collecting souls. So, like, really late in the game, like 25 plus minutes, he might start getting more armor than someone like Nautilus or Leona. But in the early game, he is so much weaker than they are. I think his base armor is actually lower than Janna. I might be mistaken on that, but people think that Thresh is really tanky, but he is not. Yeah, he has 28 base armor. Gets no armor per level. I don't know. Maybe like Janna's a little extreme, but that is. I just want to look at Janna for fun here. I know that we're really over time, but now that I mention it, I kind of have to look. It's the same. So he looks like he's this armored engaged champion, but he literally has the same like armor level as someone that's basically wearing a bikini that's walking around on League. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. So his base stats are so low. He does have higher health than she does, but I mean, he's just deceptively really, really squishy. I think Nautilus's base armor is like 37 or something. Leona's like 44. He's just a lot squishier than other champs early on, so that means those champs can muscle him out, you know, potentially. He does have a lot of outplay potential with a lot of engages, but Nautilus specifically is super good against him overall. Leona's a skill matchup, but I feel like he just doesn't have the same base stats as a lot of other tanks out there. His CC is a lot more conditional and close range, so he does have the hook, which is nice for the engage, but it's got a half a second wind up. It doesn't pull them like very close to you. It kind of pulls them in, but you have to go out of your way to go into them, which is a bad combination if you're squishy a lot of times. So like his hook is not as brutal as something like a Nautilus or a Blitz or even a Pyke hook. And then, like, he does have outplay potential with his flay if you're really, really good. Like, he's got peel, which is nice. The ultimate, though, I feel like leaves a lot to be desired. It's so close range. It's got a delay on it now. I just feel like it's just not great. And his items aren't amazing either. Typically, he'll just end up getting things like a redemption or whatever, which is, like, okay. But the fact that he's ranged, that he's considered ranged, means that he doesn't get as much benefit out of things like Knight's Vow, which really sucks. So there's just a lot of stuff about him where he has a lot of utility. He probably has one of the best, most versatile kits in the game. It's just a matter of stats. His stats are just so much worse, and his itemization is so much worse than a lot of other champs. And the fact that, like, Nautilus has been buffed so much, Leona's been buffed a lot, Pyke was introduced into the game, and he's very strong. He has a lot more kill potential than Thresh does. I think it's just been really rough on him. So, like, win rate wise, you know, he's probably at about 50%. He might even be a little bit lower. Yeah, he's about 50%. He's still the most popular support. But then one of the telltale signs is in Pro. He's just been out of Pro for a really long time as well. 22% win rate in a recent tournament. I mean, he's just terrible against Nautilus, Braum, Tom. So there are, you know, you definitely can win, but you're fighting an uphill battle because you're going to get outscaled by Soraka and Janna. So you have to hard pressure them early. And then it's just really hard to engage on things like Nautilus and be successful early on. So it's just, a lot of his matchups are really bad. And then, like, he doesn't have any innate sustain, so he can also get poked out and blown up by things like Brand and Zyra. So there just are not a lot of matchups that are great against him. You can muscle your way through it if you're really good mechanically and you practice him a lot, but I think more so than in the past, you just have to work overtime to be effective on him. So he is very good. If you can one-trick him, he can still be really solid. It's just that it's a lot. You're working a lot harder to get the same stuff that you've done in the past because everyone else has been buffed around him. Bard is another one who can be really good. He's just so short range. That's what it is for me. It's like his auto attack's 500 range. That's kind of rough. He can do pretty solid damage. He has great roams. His ult, you know, has some of the most utility of any abilities in the game. Just a lot of stuff you can do with that. If you practice him and sort of learn what to do in different situations. So I think Bard can be really good, but kind of like Thresh, I just think he's working uphill. Like, you just have to get, like, the perfect setup on things. His items are, like, kind of bad. His, like, E and his R literally have no scaling whatsoever, like, no ratios on them. And then his W, you don't get a lot of points in that. It's got kind of some sad ratios. So the itemization on him is pretty rough. So you pretty much have to get, like, really maximum effect out of your utility. So he's okay. I just think he's a bit more conditional than a lot of other people. Blitz, I think of Blitz as more of a counter pick, but he can be, like, really strong if you get him. He's going to be banned a lot, especially the lower the elo bracket goes. He gets banned a ton, like, down in bronze and silver, but, you know, he does a lot of damage. If you land that hook, you can blow people up. For me, he's just very one-dimensional. If you don't land the hook, you don't have anything else going for you. So I'd probably rather have something more versatile, but if you get really good on him, if you land every hook, he can definitely take over games. Leona's another one that's pretty strong. I think she was getting some pro play. A lot of people were going back towards the Braum and Tom, but, you know, she still had 55% presence, 60% win rate in pro. So those buffs to Leona over the last year to her Q and I think her E are very, very effective. So she is risky, but she does have really nice hard engage if you have the right team comp for it. So I think that she's one of the better engages. She's right there with Nautilus. So if you want to, like, one-trick Nautilus, maybe have Leona as your backup. They are similar. They're not quite the same, but it's a similar playstyle. So I think that she can be solid. I think she's a lot less likely to get nerfed than Nautilus is. So if they nerf Nautilus out, you know, Leona might sort of take over the crown of most popular engage. And then finally, Yuumi is someone I'll put in here. Yuumi is a really weird case. Like, right now, she's not in a great spot. She was played some in pro. I think they're going to buff her probably. I think they over-nerfed her. I mean, her stats are abysmal right now. But if you do get proficient, I guess they're not that bad. I mean, she's still, like, one of the bottom 10 champions probably in solo queue. But she wasn't played a ton, I don't believe, in pro. in this most recent tournament, which is good because she was 100% presence, like, in some of, like, the recent tournaments, or at least very, very high presence. I think in Worlds, what was her, let me see, just real quick here. I know we're out of time, but now I'm curious now that I mentioned it. Was it 918 or 919? Let me just see Worlds, right? World Championship total. I guess it wasn't that bad. What, maybe it was like in the LCS or something when she first got released. I guess she wasn't played that much at Worlds. Anyways, at some point, she was really powerful before she got all those nerfs. So, I don't know. She has a very interesting kit. I think, I suspect they're going to probably change her around a lot during the season. So, if you want to roll the dice and try to get good on her and just hope that they buff her up a little bit or that they nerf some of the other champs, you could try it out. But I think she has the potential with her kit to be very strong. It's just her numbers are really off right now. Her mana costs are just way too high. But she has the potential to be good down the line. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Sorry, it's a super long video. I will have timestamps in there for you to help you navigate it. You know, maybe trying to go after 50 champs is a little ambitious, but I know always, you know, in these videos, people are always like, but what about this champ? What about that champ? You know, and so I tried to cover as many as I possibly could and at least give you some ideas on what I think about them. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll see everybody next time.